Hello everyone and welcome back to Behind the Trowel. My name is Natasha Bilson, aka Tash_Archeo. And today we're going to be diving into episode 2 of series 2 of the Great British Dig, where we went to Stretton in Staffordshire. And wow, what an episode it was. So let me introduce you to our guests. Remember, this is an interactive live stream. So if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments section, which is on YouTube chat box on the right-hand side. Just removing my spotlight. So now we should be able to see everyone. Hello, everyone. How are we doing?
Good. Good.
I've missed you all. Right. Caroline, first of all, thank you for joining us. This is the first time that you are with us over on YouTube. So thank you so much. And I hope you have a lovely experience. Bearing in mind, this is live, so who knows what will happen. And
what could possibly go wrong?
Yeah, what could possibly go wrong? I mean, one time I think my camera got stuck and everyone panicked. Fair enough, though. And even I panicked. Oh no, what's going to happen to it? But luckily it was fine. Good old Wi-Fi for you. But anyway, I think what we'll do is do a quick introduction of everybody, just in case we've got anyone tuning in who's not sure who's who, as we have some people who are on camera and some people who have been off camera as well, but has been a part of the program every step of the way. Okay, so first of all, Caroline, please introduce yourself.
I'm Caroline. I'm an archaeologist from the University of Chester. I specialise in Iron Age and Roman stuff mostly, but we throw a bit of Bronze Age in there as well, which is always good. And I was invited to come and join this episode. I had the privilege of working with you all.
Thank you so much, Caroline. I have a few questions for you, but we'll get to that a little bit later. Marcus, hello.
Hello.
Just a little quick as usual. What you do?
So I'm Marcus, and on the show I work with all the finds and the site and create digital interpretations and try to kind of visualize the stuff that comes out of the trenches.
Thank you. And Chris?
My name's Chris Scott. I'm one of the directors at Solstice Heritage. We support the behind the scenes archaeology really on the show. So we do a lot of the finding of the sites and research, and a lot of the excavation that supports the show, and all of the writing up and post excavation work afterwards.
Brilliant. Such an important part of the show, which no one ever gets to see. So all your questions directed to Chris and Solstice Heritage. And then we have Mr. Seeds and Graves. Hello, Dom.
Hiya. So yes, my name is Don O'Mara. I'm the environmental archaeologist who works on some of the projects. So my job is to look for the remains of plants or other material from the soil samples, and then I write the reports and send them on to Chris as part of the final site archive.
Thank you, Don. And last but not least, Chloe.
Hi. I'm just jealous that Auto Transcript thing isn't going to call me to Toronto Myra like it did for Dom, but I'm basically a co-presenter with Tash on the show, and I'm a bit of a generalist, I guess.
You know, now
not
that you've
a specialist in anything, jack of all trades, master of none.
Roman glass?
Not even that.
No?
There are people who know more.
There's always someone who knows more somewhere, but we know just as much. That's what I'm going to go with. That's what I tell myself. My daily affirmation to myself now. I know what I'm talking about. But you know, you've actually all touched upon different things there, and that's archaeology is so varied, and that's one thing I think I always say this on every single live stream. It's probably why I love the profession so much. And I would have to say this episode again kind of highlighted the very different aspects. I mean, we have this beautiful slow motion shots of Don doing the sieving, then you know, that all coming out. That was beautiful shots. Of course, we had like the usual digging shots. We had recording. I mean, we had you have that phrase, smoke. Was it smoke up? Oh, what's the expression with smoke up your bum? That one. When someone's yeah, when someone's like, you know, big headed or whatever, or you're trying to put smoke up their butt. But anyway, I had a line coming out of my butt, thanks to Marcus's beautiful trajectory of the roundhouse. So thank you for that. But no, that was beautiful. That was you, right, Marcus, or was that just someone in?
I'm going to say no. I didn't draw the circle. I did not draw the circle. I
You didn't do any of the
wouldn't have
circles.
predicted it.
But there's one thing I've noticed actually about this one in particular, and that's obviously with prehistory especially, and the actual natural versus the archaeological deposits. They were quite similar. And obviously we had the slow-mos of Hugh spraying in the water to try and highlight the different colours of soils and archaeological deposits. And actually I see why they had to put in post those circles, because for most people they're like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
I don't see a pit.
Yeah.
So that was really cool. But first of all, actually, I think it'd be quite nice to maybe have a bit more of the background history for why we chose the site, all the research that went into it before we even got there, and maybe actually what's happened since, if that's okay. Chris?
Yeah, so we do loads of work in advance of all of the shoots for the Great British Dig, and this particular site was a great one because we were able to use the that fantastic aerial survey data to find and try and target the different remains on the site. So that was fantastic for us because we really were desperate to get some prehistory into this season, and it's actually potentially quite difficult archaeology to target in the format of the show in quite small spaces. Obviously, people who know a bit about archaeology will possibly realize that quite often prehistoric archaeology like that is dug in huge, great big areas where you can see huge, enormous settlements all in one go. So the aerial survey gave us that in many ways, but we had to target tiny little areas, even though we did dig the biggest trench ever on the Great British Dig, which was pretty cool. It was still really, in terms of a lot of the archaeology that's done with remains of that kind, it's still quite small areas, but we were really super keen to do that. And again, as usual, we did a lot of research looking at what we could target, how we could best try and investigate that archaeology. So for me, it was a really excellent one. And in a way, it shows how varied the archaeological discipline is, really, that we got to use AP data and stuff like that, and work with Marcus particularly and everyone on the show in terms of visualizing that whole settlement, but also the kind of landscape context for it as well. Hopefully that all makes sense.
I think so. If not, leave a comment in the chat and we can always come back to it next week or the week after. Yeah, you mentioned quite a few things there, because is this, I think, the first or maybe second episode on the Great British Dig that we've used AP data, aerial photography?
I think it might be
predominantly as like a main example.
I think it's probably the very first one where we've really used AP or aerial photographic transcription to really drive the kind of the way we've investigated the site. So for us, that's great. You know, there's all sorts of archaeological data and landscape data we can use to try and target archaeology, which is another good kind of thing in terms of helping people. Always keen where possible that we get across on the show that actually a lot of the time we don't know what is there. This is you know, proper archaeological work where everything that we dig is something new that we're adding to knowledge. So in this instance, you know, that aerial photographic transcription work had never been tested, which I think Chloe said on the show. So for us, that's great, you know, and in fact it showed in the episode that there's a lot more than that. Even that AP work, which was excellent stuff, there's a lot more there than even that transcription showed.
Yeah.
And actually, before we went online, we were discussing something that Alex had found, who's the drone operator. If anybody would like to actually, why not, let's share that information as well.
Well, so I think it was the penultimate day, really. It was absolutely the last digging day. We were mostly recording. And Alex was using his drone to take some aerial shots of everybody digging. but he did a much wider one. He did a few wider ones of the site, and I happened to be about when he was processing them, and he said, "Oh, come over and have a look." And what we actually saw on those aerial shots was what looked very much like evidence for more roundhouses on that playing field, which was fantastic. There was no time to put this in the show, but it just goes to show that things like aerial photography, satellite imagery, they are so affected by changing seasons, by changes in how arid it is. So, for example, if you go through a really dry patch, you might be more likely to pick up crop marks and things. There is so, just for people out there who are watching this now, if you go to Google Earth on the desktop, it doesn't work on the mobile version. If you go to the desktop of Google Earth, and there's a little icon that's like a little clock, and you can use that to look at satellite imagery over time. If you do that for an area that's maybe fields or playing fields, something with some greenery in it, and you look at the different time periods, there's a good chance that you're going to pick up in different aerial photographs, satellite photographs that are taken at different times, you're going to pick up different clues to what lies beneath, because it's so dependent on seasons and all of that stuff. So it was just fantastic that, he just said, "Oh my goodness, look," and we hadn't seen that before. So there's more there, those playing fields are rich. That whole area is so rich. And I just thought it was a really cool thing that happened that we couldn't put in the show because it was too late.
Exactly. And actually, Nigel, thank you for your question. Nice to see you, or to read your messages. And it was actually something he had mentioned before, and I guess this kind of answers it actually, which was, based on what you found and didn't find, could you hazard a guess as to how much more might be hiding under the gardens and playing fields of Stretton? So, as you said, Chloe, there's an abundance of activity going on there. Now, Caroline, looking at, from your expertise coming into the programme as a late prehistoric specialist, and looking at the roundhouses, and even having that beautiful arrowhead and other artefacts, the pottery sherds and everything like that, how was it, the experience for you, and then honing in your skills and looking at what we had in such an unusual setting? You're used to teaching students who are 18 plus, and you've got primary school kids running around and asking you questions as well. So how was the whole experience for you?
To be honest, it was fantastic. The whole team is hugely professional. It's like a big Great British Dig family, I think, is what I felt that we were sort of welcomed into, which was really lovely. The site itself was, I think, as Chris mentioned, going into it not really knowing when the roundhouses date from was kind of one of the big questions, and that was kind of what ran throughout the whole episode. And so for me, actually being able to tie that down a little bit chronologically was fantastic. And I think knowing the extent now potentially of these kind of, from the aerial photographs and from the new drone footage, of how big this kind of landscape was, this inhabited space was, I suspect it's not all Bronze Age. So we've got some great Bronze Age dates, we've got some Iron Age features out of it, which just sort of goes to show that, you've got at least 2,500 years worth of occupation in that landscape. And, to identify even a part of that and unravel even a part of that in such tiny trenches, relatively speaking, prehistoric archaeology, especially roundhouses, pit alignments, that kind of stuff, it kind of needs to be done in whacking great open areas to really understand it. So I think the achievement that the episode, or the sort of the team have kind of done there is fantastic. And to involve the kids and to be part of their playing ground, their playing field, they were so enthusiastic. They asked fantastic questions. I think there was a real sort of magical sense when they were in there, kind of standing in the arc of the roundhouse. They were kind of genuinely sort of awe-inspired, really. And if we can help to generate that kind of enthusiasm in the next generations of archaeologists, then, I think for me, that's our job done. I think that's, you know, a job well done for us.
Yeah, it was definitely an experience. And Don, how was it for you as well to have the kids there? Were you able to show them what you were up to with the environmental processing?
Yeah, I didn't really see them that much actually. I think they were mainly by the trench. It's always good to have people of all ages at the site, but it was good to have the school kids there, especially as they literally look out onto the playing field during school time, and to think that not only the roundhouses but the stone tools and the evidence of farming is literally a foot beneath their feet. I think they really got a kick out of it, and then the enthusiasm they showed it's just really nice. And I think it can you can almost forget that this stuff is very interesting, because all of us deal with it very much day to day, and we think of nothing of looking at material or handling artifacts that might be hundreds or thousands or potentially tens of thousands of years old. And it I guess over time it does kind of lose some of its special nature. You take a lot of these things for granted. So it's nice to be reminded that this stuff is of genuine interest to members of the public and people generally. So yeah, it was great. It's always good to engage with the local people.
And by the way, we have Elaine joining us from William Shrewsbury. So hello, and thank you so much.
Hi,
thank you so much for letting us do this, or convincing anyone you had to convince, because it's, I think, the most important and just unbelievable experience that we all had, like in the school, just unbelievable. And out of curiosity, how does this impact the understanding of the archaeology in that area? Like, how big of a deal is this? Chris or Caroline, maybe. It's big.
So I think in terms of what it does is start. Caroline said this already, really, but I think from my point of view, certainly it pulls out the length of time that is clearly represented in that aerial photographic transcription. That's really exciting, because there's clearly change in that landscape. There's clearly long-term use of that area, which in some ways might be expected, but again, that data had never been tested in any way until we did that piece of work. So from my point of view, that's super exciting, because it puts a sort of story to that landscape, which is, you know, thousands of years in length, and until now that area didn't have that. So that's great. And apart from anything else, it provides a whole new story for the people that live there now as well.
Brilliant.
Yeah, we know that there are Bronze Age barrows in and around sort of Stretton. We know that there are, I think there's even an Anglo-Saxon cemetery on the sort of Burton side of Stretton. We've got Roman settlements to the north at Derby, Roaster, Wall to the south. You know, Stretton is right on the Roman road on Vignfield Street, one of the main kind of thoroughfares of Roman Britain. And it was kind of surprising not to get as much Roman material as I thought we might get. I mean, we had some wall plaster, which presumably is residual. It's kicking around in that landscape. But to be able to actually pinpoint the Iron Age and the Bronze Age within that chronological sequence now, I think is really important, and adds to the whole kind of the palimpsest, the kind of layers upon layers of archaeology that we've got for the whole of the kind of the Trent and the Dove valleys, really, on those gravels. So, you know, Stretton is now, you know, from the Bronze Age at least, kind of habitually, if not in one long go without any break, you know, we've got occupation from around 2,500 BC at least, all the way through Roman period, Anglo-Saxon, all the way up to the industrial and today. And I think that's something really valuable to add to our archaeological knowledge.
Brilliant. And it's just, what an amazing site. And you're right, I can't remember, I actually forgot about that Roman find that made the show. I forgot about that. I think all I thought about was that the arrowhead. That was the main that stuck in my mind. So when I saw it, I was like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. But yeah, I agree. I expected more Roman looking back now, and it's quite a surprise actually that we didn't get something. But it seemed, I think the trenches I were in were basically nothing anyway really happened in them. So it just goes to show what happens when you build on top of something, you're gonna destroy what's underneath it.
Yeah, and I think it kind of, I was expecting to maybe find more in the back gardens, but it just goes to show the extent to which that modern development disturbed the archaeology. And looking at the geology there, I think we're on gravels, which is what makes seeing the features, the subtle features, so difficult as well. But I wouldn't be surprised if there was large scale sort of gravel extraction before the construction of the housing estate. So you think aggregate, you know, you're going to use it in concrete production, that kind of stuff. You've got it there on your doorstep. And I suspect it probably swept up a lot of the archaeology in that process.
Yeah. We had planned to do some geoarchaeology work down by the river, but all the way along the Trent is all gravel extraction pits. So it was actually quite difficult to find somewhere where we wouldn't have hit a gravel site. So we had to that was a bit of a write-off in the end. But yeah, there's a lot of extraction there. And I think was there some suggestion that the Roman wall plaster might potentially have been brought in with some soil. So I think when the area, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we had discussed on site that maybe when the playing field was being leveled, that that Roman plaster might have come in during the house construction and the school construction with some of the topsoil, but it's a bit anomalous.
It's the sort of piece where out of context like that, you can say so much, isn't it? But I think everything that we're discussing just highlights how crucial archaeology is, you know. I mean, it's such a tiny, tiny cost when you look at the cost of development, and yet the cost of losing it, that's forever, that's gone. If you don't put in that at the time that you're developing a site, at the time that you're quarrying, at the time that you're building, at the time that you're leveling up a playing field, you're just wiping clean that information. So we're very lucky in Stretton that we managed to get what we did. But I think the places where we didn't find things, where aerial photographs are clearly saying, you know, we've got roundhouse drip ditches here. It's pretty rock, you know, kind of tight, that, not rock tight, but whatever tight. Watertight, that's the one, appropriate for a drip ditch. But, you know, that can be lost. That can be lost very quickly. And I'd like to say as well that actually, you know, one thing that maybe doesn't make it across in the show, because it can be very difficult to explain stratigraphy in a kind of digestible way. And especially it's difficult to explain something that is mostly based on feel in a visual medium like TV. But a lot of what we learned by digging there was based on the different content, the different soils that we encountered. So we've got this line of Bronze Age pitch. The main reason we know that the house is later than those pits is because the drip ditch of the house cuts into one of the pits. And that's the kind of thing that it's a lot easier to explain in person when you have a trowel in your hand. And it's also the kind of thing that an aerial photograph can't tell you.
Yeah.
So unless you have archaeologists going in there and digging it, it's gone forever. And we can never answer the sort of amazing questions we're able to answer at Stretton.
Commercial archaeology, it's important. Please don't push us out of planning permission. Thanks. Appeals, we will start distributing online. Sign the petition. Thank you again. But yeah, you know, so many things that we've highlighted. And actually, we did say on camera, unfortunately, just didn't make the edit, about how what we do is so important because, as you said, Chloe, once it's gone, it's gone. Like that's it, no opportunity to reevaluate and further expand our understanding of it. In terms of questions, Marcus, guess what time it is? It's explaining your model time. So Nigel just had a question here, which was, Marcus, that was a very cool radius calculator you used to calculate the size of that pot. The original pot must have been frighteningly fragile based on your 3D model. How was the process of creating that pottery from the Iron Age rim shard?
Okay, so the one thing we need to be sort of clear on is that you need a diagnostic sherd, a pot sherd. So you need a pot sherd that's got a rim or a base. You can't really do it from a body shed. So what we then do is we identify the type that it is, and then we look back through the archaeological catalogue. So for decades, archaeologists have been finding pottery sherds, they've been finding different vessels, sometimes whole, sometimes half, but they've been finding them for various dates, and they've been creating a catalogue in different regions and in different time periods. So what we do is we look and see if we can actually find a likely candidate that fits that particular profile, that particular, the fabric of the pottery itself. And then once we do that, then we can actually work out what group it belongs to, what type it is, and then we can actually recreate it. And we use the thing you saw there was the rim chart. So basically it measures the radius or of the actual pot itself, so we get an idea of how big it is. And we know roughly how thick it is based on the actual sherd that we've got ourselves. So then we're able to actually match that with the candidate and then produce the 3D model. So there's quite a bit to it, but it requires previous investigation that's happened over the decades with other archaeologists, which is why it's important that all these things are registered and logged somewhere so that we can go back and have a look. So we are essentially sort of building on the knowledge that other people have left us and created for us, and we're working forward. So we're always pushing forward with new knowledge, but also referring back to old knowledge that's been catalogued properly and is available.
I do feel as well this episode, you had a bit more airtime to explain how you did what you did, just a little bit more than normal. So that was quite nice, just a little bit more. Hopefully one day they'll give you like, a full 5 minutes.
Well, I think people might get bored.
No, we
5
won't.
minutes of me flicking through a pottery book.
Yeah, but I'll use this and that.
Is it this one? Is it this one?
You don't only just make pottery. I mean, you create these amazing 3D models, including what we got to see last night, which had these lovely little cows. My favorite little additions to the roundhouses, the settlement area. How was the process of creating that as well? And what did you use to create it?
Okay, so the first thing, because actually that's a reconstruction of part of the site based on the crop marks. So it's based, so the distribution of the houses and the field boundary, and then one of them, I believe we spoke with Chris that we thought it was an animal pen. So that's the one that has the cows in. So the cows are there to basically signify that that's an animal pen. So I think I put about 4 or 5 roundhouses in there. One I think is like a barn for storing things, and there's one under construction, and then there's a couple that are actually occupied. And then created these, just basically created a tile essentially of the landscape and furnished it with stuff. So, and I did that for the last day so that then we could show the children that came around what it looked like, and it started off from above, and then we could actually take the camera right in, because it's like, imagine it like a miniature film set, set in the past, and we'd be able to show. And some of the views I think work really well from there. From the sort of perspective of someone in the Iron Age, someone actually walking through the landscape and seeing it rather than a bird's eye view. And I know that there are other mediums where that particular model will be shown from a ground view. So it's basically how it was created. The roundhouses were all built from reference material. So like the roundhouse that was shown in the show, there are plenty of examples of people have reconstructed these things. So we're using the timbers and the walling and stuff, and the thatching and stuff. So it was very much based on all that information, but it's the plan of it is from the crop mark evidence.
Sorry, I muted myself. I knew I had muted myself. I had to do it there.
That's all right.
Thank you so much again, and I just wanted everyone to understand like how you came up with that amazing representation. And again, I mean, you're in next week's episode as well, aren't you? Yes, you are, because you do something even
we're
more
doing
cool.
devices, aren't we? Doing the prison one.
Yeah.
So actually, there's a feature in next week's episode that I wanted to do in this one, which I'm not going to give away, but you'll see it. So that's why we built a really elaborate model in Stretton, but we also built a really elaborate model next week so that we could do this this thing that we're going to do next week.
Brilliant. Yeah, next week is a really cool one, actually.
Yeah.
Now that I just remembered that bit, yeah, that was cool. That was fun. Sorry, gotta know, just gotta watch next week's.
Yeah.
Yeah. And actually, we are slowly hitting the, actually, it's 6:37 already. Supposed to be finishing at 6:45. Okay, right, we'll try and do this. So we have 2 more questions that have just popped in. If you have any questions, please get them in right now, and we will try and answer them before the live stream ends. Let's do a couple of hellos. Of course, so hello Nigel, Elaine, Barbara, Don. Hello Don. Phil, past preservers. Hello Nigel again, another Nigel. Alex, and Anthony. Oh, and Paul. Okay, perfect. Oh, this is actually about Falkirk. So Chris, this is one for you. And apologies for anyone, but this is actually quite a cool question. So Anthony asked, when the fort ramparts were built, was the north rampart dispensed with because the west and east ramparts would butt up against the Antonine wall?
Effectively, yes. So as funny enough, as with Hadrian's Wall, the Romans, just like a lot of modern builders, changed their mind halfway through the job and decided that they were going to add forts, or add, in the case of the Antonine Wall, add more forts to the line of the wall. And as we understand it currently, Falkirk was one of those forts. It was added to the wall after the Antonine Wall had been well under construction already. So I think that the answer to that is yes. They butted, if you like, a sort of 3 sides of a fort up to the back of the existing Antonine Wall as it carried through the landscape. So yeah, it was a change halfway through the job, so no doubt it added to the bill.
You know what? I'd love to go back again. Such a beautiful. More Antonine Wall, please. That is so cool. What an amazing site. Okay, and then we have the lovely question from Paul. Thank you, Paul, for your question. Caroline, this is for you. What is your opinion on the Arrowhead find?
Well, it was rather nice, really, wasn't it? I think Chloe's face when she saw it first pretty much sums it up. Yeah, it was a lovely kind of barbed and tanged arrowhead, classic kind of early Bronze Age, I suppose they start coming in. It was chipped on one of the barbs, suggesting, I don't think it was recent damage, so I wonder if that's why it was maybe discarded, or it got damaged in use maybe. But yeah, it was really, really lovely. And I don't think it did look like a Christmas tree, despite what Hugh said. Maybe if you got like 3 or 4 of them together and stacked them up, you could make a Christmas tree.
He hasn't seen enough barbed and tanged arrowheads yet, but we'll get him there.
I must admit, I've never looked at Arrowhead and thought that before, and then it just made me think, yeah, I guess if you're looking at it from another perspective, you can see I know he was making a joke, but actually, yeah, and it's quite perfect timing because it's still Christmas. It's my tree, and we need very, very tiny baubles. That's Caroline put it lovely. I remember, I think I was there actually when you were filming that scene. I came to get some crisps from our secret stash. We hide it behind Marcus. There's a little box.
Oh,
yeah, we have all the treats there. That we
Don't tell them about the secret stash.
Guardian of the secret snacks.
Literally, we all go there because we have a question to ask, and really we're just going to get some snacks.
Yeah, basically, I just run the Big HQ tuck shop.
So we need
add that to your CV. I quite like that. Yeah.
No, do you know what's lovely about the Arrowhead? Marina found it. Marina's one of our slightly more behind the scenes archaeologists who is there every day, working hard, digging, recording, doing all that stuff. And she, when I spoke to her, which you see on screen, but I don't know if it comes across. I mean, she was almost in tears because it was such a beautiful thing to have found.
Yeah.
It was so nice that she found that, because she was working so hard, you know, she's a professional, she'd come in, she was just doing her job, but she was working so hard to make the TV show, in which ultimately, you know, we only see a tiny glimpse of these archaeologists, and it was just fantastic. It was such a great thing that she found that.
Yeah, and I'm glad that we were able, well, the viewer was able to see that as well, that you know, just the whole thing unfold in real time. I think it was it was great. Sometimes the cameras are there at the right moment, and they get these amazing glimpses of just pure like disbelief at what you find, because you know these are things that you see in the museums. You know, you read about it, you learn when you learn to decipher different artifacts, but when you find something in context, that's when it's like it's amazing. Yeah, because we do get things that are residual, something with topsoil or just churned up, that is great, but it doesn't really add to the archaeological report, so to speak, or our understanding of the site. As was mentioned earlier, sometimes when you have like a new development, we have soil coming in across to build up the ground. So you have like gravels and things like that are brought from areas that literally go through soils from other construction sites. They come into one place, they're separated into different piles, and they're taken on to another construction site, and that's what's used to build up the ground level. And sometimes you find things in that. You find bricks and other things like that all the time in there. And they're great little finds, but don't really mean much to us, unfortunately, in the grand scheme of it all. But before we start to wrap up, is there anything that we haven't mentioned that any of the experts would like to mention after watching this show that didn't make the show? I think we've covered it all, haven't we?
Yeah.
I think we did quite well today.
Yeah, I think probably from my point of view, just to say it's been kind of covered a little bit already, but as well as that arrowhead being a really lovely thing in and of itself, again, it moved us forward in dating that the pit alignment. And again, as Chloe said already, sometimes some of that stuff doesn't really get through into the final show because it's just difficult, and it takes quite a long time physically on screen to explain all of that. But as Chloe's already given the example of the roundhouse cutting the pits, but the nice thing as well for all the archaeologists there as well is that it actually helped to date those features, and that really moved us forward in the story, which then again, from that tiny little arrowhead, suddenly you zoom all the way out and it gives you a Bronze Age landscape separate to the Iron Age stuff. So in and of itself, it was the most beautifully crafted thing. And someone had clearly, spent many, many hours of their life making that beautifully crafted little thing, but equally it contributes to that whole sort of like landscape story, which, so for me, it was in doing the job of kind of being a site manager and trying to understand all of this archaeology, thinking about the report, that for me, those little things are maybe a touch boring when put in that way, but super exciting actually, because it contributes to the whole sort of story of the entire site.
Yeah, it was it's an exceptional site indeed, and it's nice that we have artifacts to date it, because most of the time you don't really get pottery and things like that, do you? Like from my experience anyway, so you're always like prehistoric. I think. So that's it, you don't get any pottery and things like that. So it's lovely in Arrowheads yet. So again, thank you all so much for joining in on this live stream. And it's definitely been insightful. And actually, I feel like I need to go and watch the episode again, because I'm like, I want to see the reactions. I do love it so much. And one comment that I'd like to make as well is, I've noticed, especially from series 1 to series 2, they are covering a lot more of the archaeology in the show. Like they are giving more to it, which I think is fantastic. Because for those who somewhat criticize the show in saying it's simple, the simplicity of what we do, just remember this is for people who it's targeted at individuals who are interested potentially in archaeology or don't really know much about it, and it's an opportunity for them to engage with it. And of course, it's a community dig as well, so it's all about the community, and you see that in this episode. I mean, you see all those potential yaks, young archaeologist club members, just getting involved with it. So just remember that when you watch. a little bit different from the other shows, so be kinder. And as you can see, Chris and Solstice Heritage, they do a lot. They work even with the VOs that Hugh does. Solstice Heritage are making sure that that is factually correct. Okay, there's no like sprinkling magical fairy dust on it to make it sound really cool for TV. Like what he's saying has been checked and checked and checked and checked and checked and checked, okay, to make sure everything's fine. So please also remember that as well. There's a lot of work that goes into it that doesn't make it, but by doing these live streams, hopefully you'll see and potentially some other stuff that we'll do as well. But anyway, thank you all so much. Caroline, special thank you for joining us, and we'll see you all next week. Have a lovely evening, everybody. Don't forget you can catch up on the Great British Dig on all4.com. I'll leave a link in the description below as well. And while you're at it, just watch all 7 episodes I think is available on there. Just watch them all. Get those ratings up. Help us out. And if you do...
Don't know.
I'm including the pilot. I mean, yes, I was.
Well, you're not in it, Sam. Why would you?
It's fine. It's okay.
You are in a very strong disguise.
Yeah. And they're in the background. Let's just go with that. Yeah, I'll pretend that I was an off-screen archaeologist for the pilot. In my heart. But if you have any comments or any feedback as well, don't forget to use the hashtag #GreatBritishDig, and hopefully we will see it on socials. And don't forget as well, when the episode is airing, most of us are on Twitter sharing some photos and things like that using the hashtag #GreatBritishDig and having some jokes. And even I'm on Twitter, and I find it quite hard to use, believe it or not. So if I'm on it, you can be on it as well. So come and head over to Twitter as well. Join us on the day of the show being aired, and you can join in on our fun little backstage photographs and extra reading that we sometimes provide as well. That's enough of me rambling on. Thank you all so much for joining us, and see you all next week. Bye, everyone.
Bye.